Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Zag Talk podcast. It's episode 25, kind of a milestone, I guess. And it is a big day or a big episode, I guess, because we are fresh off a win against Dixie State, but more importantly, we have the Texas game coming up on Saturday. And so we will be previewing that game after we talk a little bit about what just happened against Dixie State. We came away with a decisive victory. I think every Zag fan who watched the game was probably pleased with a few things, surprised by a few things, and maybe a little disappointed in a few things. Carson, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Dixie State game. Just really high level. We don't need to go super in depth. I mean, I think we all know that the more important game is coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was it was the first time that we've really seen the youth of this team show itself for longer periods of time. And I think that's partially because you had Timmy in foul trouble for a lot of the first half. So you got to see some more lineups that maybe we're not as used to running in because he was out for such a long period of time. But yeah, I mean, there's periods of turnovers, of some defensive lapses after we started the game off so strong defensively. That was actually really exciting for the first, 10 minutes of the game. But then we seemed to kind of fall into what we've had issues with the last couple of years in 3-point defense, where we were letting them get off some clean looks. And that's kind of what kept them in the game for a while. But yeah, the turnovers in the first half, I think we cleaned it up quite a bit in the second half in terms of turnovers, where we were, I think we had 11 or 12 in the first half and then finished not much higher than that. So I think it was good. The second half was a lot better in terms of cleaning it up and getting back to kind of our bread and butter offensively, which obviously helps when Timmy's in there, but just looked a little disjointed in the half court for parts of the first half. Offensively, Nembhard and Timmy didn't have their best games. Obviously, we know Timmy was on the bench, but Nembhard didn't really seem to get a lot of looks, missed a couple easy ones. So I think those are two things that will look in the Texas game that might look a little different, and hopefully Nembhard can get going. But it was good to see the bench guys and some of the other non-primary guys get to show that they are more than capable of stepping up and scoring. So that was good to see from the young guys.
Yeah, I thought that the young guys all did fairly well. It was really, kind of what happens when things maybe don't completely go our way, like when Drew Timme has to, take a seat on the bench. I think that it did show a very, very large gap in the way that we play offense in the half court. I think that the fact that the team relies so heavily upon Drew Timme can be a gift and a curse. I think in situations where we don't have him, we showed that we aren't able to drop 50 plus points in a half, which I think, I believe we only scored 40 points in the first half, which is the first time we haven't scored 50 or more, in any of the 3 games that we've had so far this season. So that was a little bit of a concern for me. Another concern would just be our shooting ability. I think some people blow this out of proportion a little bit, but yeah, I mean, shooting 28% is not great. I would really like to see us either shoot a high percentage or just make more threes. Like making 6 threes in a game against Dixie State, maybe not the end of the world. It might be against a team like Texas if they shoot like they did against Houston Baptist, where they shot 56%. So, and then last thing of note, Chet's a star. I mean, it was kind of his coming out party. He had a double. I mean, he's going to have at least one triple-double this year. I'm just going to call it right now. I think there's going to be a game where he has a double-double by halftime and he, just continues to block a ton of shots going into the second half. So, yeah. And then I think, my last big takeaway was how well Anton Watson played. I mean, he didn't really fill up the stat sheet in terms of scoring, but in every other category, he was fantastic. And just the aggressiveness and poise that he played with, it seemed kind of infectious, which was cool.
Yeah, Watson finished with 5 points, 7 assists, 5 steals, and 3 rebounds. So I mean, he looks when you watch him play, the eye test is there in terms of what we're seeing from a confidence level in his decisiveness offensively. He just looks so much more comfortable. He's not really shying away from contact or short arming it like we saw around the rim. I think I texted you guys yesterday in our group chat saying I think his passing in traffic is still, I think that's just somewhere that he needs to work on. But he did have some good, he's pretty good on the post to post passes, but when he gets going fast and trying to dish it off in traffic, that was some of the turnover issues. One thing with the 3-point shooting that I wanted to point out, as you know, I'm very solidly in the I'm not concerned. I mean, it's pretty rough to watch, especially in the first half when it was just clank after clank after clank. But one thing that I did notice going through, and if you watched the game, you probably noticed early on in the game, we were 2 of 13 in the first half from 3. Both of those were from Rasir Bolton. And a lot of those threes came in like the first 10 minutes of the half, where we just seemed, I mean, and including Drew Timme was one of those. Chet took one, which I don't have an issue with Chet shooting them, but it seemed like we were taking a lot of threes early in possessions, and like that was what our whole possession was. There wasn't a lot of working around to get to it, working inside out. It was kind of just like, oh, open shot, I'm going to shoot it, which, you know, if you're wide open, take the shot. But I think that's something that they touched on at halftime. And then when we came out in the second half, we shot it a lot better. We shot, I think, 45% from 3 in the second half, and we only shot 7 threes or 8 threes. I think we were 4 of 7, or not 4 of 7. We're 4 of 9, I think. I don't know. Numbers won't add up for me right now, but we shot a lot better in the second half. And I think the types of shots we were taking were a lot better, where it was, you know, after we'd worked it around for a possession, had a couple ball reversals, driving attacks, and then kicks. I remember Hickman had one in the corner that he got set on, and that was kicked out to him. Strother had a nice in rhythm one. So I think that's just something that's going to come along with getting used to each other and getting a flow for the offense that is just weird for us to get used to after last year, where everything clicked right away.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that the mix of guys that have been in the program for a few years, like Drew Timme and Anton Watson, you know, combine that with a bunch of young guards who they all had the green light in high school. Let's just call it what it is. It takes a little bit of adjustment. And it's like, you know, sometimes the first open shot isn't always going to be the best shot, especially when you have guys as efficient as Anton Watson and Drew Timme that can essentially get you a bucket anytime you want. So yeah, to your point, it'll just take a little bit of time for them to get used to each other. Texas, Saturday. Why don't we first talk about what Texas did in their first game this season, and then we can maybe discuss the potential, you know, opportunities and threats that we have in our matchup on Saturday. I think that, you know, they showed a lot of strength in a lot of different areas, primarily shooting the ball. Although I don't know if they'll be able to maintain their 56% from 3 average throughout the season.
If they do, they're going to win the national championship. So,
right, correct, correct. But I think that the reason why this first game for them was really, you know, kind of had an inordinate amount of eyes on it was because they have so many transfers coming in, as well as a new head coach in Chris Beard. So, yeah, really intriguing. What were your thoughts coming out of that game, looking at the stat sheet and you know how they played?
Yeah, I mean, they've been pretty balanced, which I think was a little bit of a surprise to me. I know they have a lot of talent and a lot of depth. We were just talking before we started recording that they can really go 10 guys deep pretty comfortably. But just meshing all those pieces, I thought it would take a little bit longer. Obviously, it is Houston Baptist, so we'll see what that looks like and who kind of floats to the top against us and against some of the higher competition. But Ramey seems to be their go-to guy early. He's been their highest scorer, I believe, in all of their games. I know he was not in one of their exhibitions, but he's been kind of their go-to out of the guards. Marcus Carr, I think, has taken a little bit longer to get going and get comfortable in the offense, but I don't know. I mean, there's so many new pieces going on, and they obviously have a lot of experience. Like, you look at their starting lineup, and every single person is a senior, and a lot of them are super seniors, either through COVID or a transfer year. So just a lot of depth, a lot of experience that will be interesting to see how that plays off against us on Saturday.
One thing that I find kind of interesting is that where we kind of excel this year, which is, depth in the front court, they maybe lack a little bit. And it's not that they don't have good players in the 4 and the 5 spot. And Chris Beard has said, he feels like they've got, 7 starters on the team. And the 5 guys who are in at the tip off are not necessarily in there because they're all the best players. They really have 7 guys that can start. The tallest player on their team is Trey Mitchell, who's only 6'9", right? They're all freak athletes, which is a big advantage. But is that enough to stop a potential National Player of the Year candidate and the number 1 player in the freshman class, and Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren? I think that's really where the matchup problems are gonna be. On Saturday. I think guard wise, I think that it will be fairly evenly matched up because, well, for a few reasons. I think Marcus Carr's strength is coming off of ball screens. He likes to get to the basket. There's really no secret in that. I think that he'll have a hard time shooting over our rim protectors. He'll have a hard time shooting over Chet Holmgren. Courtney Ramey, on the other hand, I mean, he's a knockdown shooter. Same with Andrew Jones. Like, those guys can shoot the ball. I think that's where the intrigue is for me, because I think our bigs are just going to dominate theirs. I'm curious to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the big thing here is their starting lineup. Like I said, I mean, their 3 is effectively Andrew Jones at 6'4". They run out a lot of 3-guard lineups, which we will too, but their 2 forwards are 6'6" and 6'7", and we know one of them, Christian Bishop, like we've talked about, Timme kind of dominated him last year in the NCAA tournament, wasn't much of a roadblock for him at all. And then Trey Mitchell is off the bench, 6'9", who I would have expected would be starting, and I think he, like you said, could be starting. They seem to like him off the bench, but other than that, not a lot of depth. I know they do have another transfer, Dylan Disu, who came in from Vanderbilt, who's been hurt, but sounds like maybe they think he might be back by Saturday. But if he is, it's probably limited minutes. But either way, don't have a lot of bigs and depth for the bigs. So getting in there, getting them in foul trouble, just getting them working is going to be huge. It's going to be a bit of a chess match, I think, between Beard and Few in terms of, going small, going big. I think that we have the ability for our bigs to be able to deal with a smaller lineup. Like, if they're pulling out that starting lineup, I don't think that's a huge issue because I think Chet is able to guard somewhat on the perimeter. But I could also see if they throw in Jalen Tyson, their freshman. He was number 35 recruit in the country this year. He's a 6'7" guard forward. And if he's in and they do go a little bigger there, like, cool, we'll keep Strother in or we'll throw in Watson too. So I think this is a game where we could see that 3 big lineup also if we really want to force it at them down low. But like you said, I think our guards are talent-wise match up with these guys. But again, experience, like they have a lot of experience on the bench too. I mean, that's kind of where some of their youth is. We just talked about Jalen Tyson, but then Devin Askew, the transfer from Kentucky. And then they have a super senior using his COVID year with Jace Febers, however you say his name, who's, he's been there for now 5 years, 6'5" guard. So it's going to be a chess match. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of the dynamic between the experience and the inexperience of Gonzaga, and then the lack of minutes continuity for both teams, as both have had a lot of new pieces come in. And then Texas, obviously, too, learning a new system with Chris Beard, more so on the defensive end than on offense.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed big time on the defensive end is that they collapse on all drives essentially. Like if one guy gets if the ball handler gets 2 feet in the paint, they basically have 4 or 5 defenders in there with them. So they kind of want to force, threes out of rhythm with guys flying out on closeouts. I could see that defense being fairly effective against us if we can't knock down our shots. At the same time, something else that I noticed was that they're still getting used to the chaos that can happen of collapsing that many guys all at one time. And I noticed on the second drive after a kick out, they had a hard time figuring out how to deal with that situation. It led to either another kick out for a wide open even more wide open three, or a dump off to a big, or just a little floater from the guy who was attacking the basket. In those situations, that's kind of where our guards thrive, is when they're attacking the basket too, right? So it'll be really interesting to see. I think you're right in that it's going to be a little bit of a chess match, because I think as much as possible, we're going to try and get Chet, Anton Watson, and Drew Timme their opportunities. I think Andrew Nemhard is going to be, key in figuring out a way to get the ball in their hands, whether it's off of ball screens or off of drive-in dishes or what have you. And I think that what Chris Beard is going to try and do on their offensive side of the ball is to try and have favorable matchups against like Drew Timme. I at this point, I don't know. I just with our ability to protect the rim, what they did against Houston Baptist, they had a lot of back cuts. They were able to attack the basket really easily, and they were able to get wide open threes. I don't think they'll be able to back cut and get easy layups like they did because of our rim protection. And I don't think they'll be able to drive like they were able to for the same reason. Because of that, they're really going to just try and get favorable matchups with their guards attacking our bigs on the perimeter, and just hoping that we can't keep up. So I like what you said. I think it's really going to be a chess match. So it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and in terms of our youth offensively, especially for the guards, what you were saying there with their defense and how they've been over crashing or over rotating a little bit and making that extra drive, I think that's going to be a huge thing for the coaching staff to drill into their brains a little bit leading up to this, is because, like we said in the first half, where it was a lot of, one pass, oh, look, I'm open, I'm going to shoot a three. That can be an issue because sure, you're open, but if you swing the ball or if you attack again on that late closeout, then you're either going to have a wide open floater, you're going to be able to get somebody cutting, or you're going to get an even more wide open where you can get set and really take your time and knock down those threes. Because if we're shooting 28% again, and we're not going to be able to make them pay for that over rotation at this point. So, I think we have the tools to do it. This I think was the first game, like I said, that we just played where we showed our youth a lot. It wasn't like it was in name, yeah, they're a Division I school that we just played, but relative to an LC State, probably not that much difference in terms of competition level when you're playing the 310th ranked team in Division I. So I think it was just one of those nights. I think we're going to bounce back, and I think as long as we can get back to what we do best and running our offense through Timme inside and letting that kind of lead us, creating turnovers and getting out in transition is really going to help us get our offense going in the half court later on in the game once we get going. So I liked what Connor had put in his article on the Zagaholic about the game, where it's just the first 5 minutes of the game, you're going to kind of get a feel for how this game might go if we're all out of sorts and really affected by the pressure that they put on our guards, not able to get anything going offensively, that it might be a little bit of a long night for us. So hopefully we come out, I think. But when I've been looking at the games that, are big marquee games in the non-conference, this is one that I've felt really confident about us winning. Not that I didn't think it was going to be a close game, but I think we match up really well with them in terms of height, where our strengths are versus, their weaknesses. And then the fact that they're, still new team, new coach, it's in the kennel. That's great for the young guys to have that behind them rather than, some of our neutral site games. So I think we're set up pretty well for it. And hopefully it'll be a good experience for the young guys to go out there in front of the kennel and get a big win.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the kennel is going to be rocking. There's no doubt about it. There's talk that this is potentially the biggest game in the history of the kennel. And I think that that's probably an accurate statement. It's the first time ever we're going to see a top 5 matchup in the kennel, which is insane. One last kind of surprise for me was how slow Texas plays. With all their athletes and everything that they've got, I was surprised that they rank 343rd in KenPom in tempo. I mean, that's wild to me. Do you think that's going to play a factor at all in how we try and play the game? Do you think that we'll try and speed up, or will we just play our pace and they'll play their pace, kind of like what we saw in the UCLA game last year?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest way that teams slow us down is preventing transition. So taking care of the ball, which, having senior guards probably helps you a little bit, but no turnovers. And then also, getting guys back and not, if you're making more of your shots, you're not going to have as many opportunities for those breakouts. But I was really surprised by the tempo too. I had the preseason rankings up here. They were 297. So I thought maybe there were some, with Beard coming over, if that was being accounted for, maybe too much, or like with all the different players, how that was really, if that was an accurate, picture of being painted of how fast they were going to play. And they've actually gotten slower after one game in there pretty significantly. It sounds like you said 340 something, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, looking at their roster, it wouldn't seem like it would be a slow tempo thing, but maybe they're running longer possessions offensively. But yeah, that's going to be a huge thing. It'll be a great test for our defense that has shown the ability to create turnovers and to speed people up on the defensive end, if that's going to translate to high level competition against experienced power conference guards.
And I think the fact that our best defensive lineup actually comes in off the bench is also really interesting too. And I believe it was Andy Patton who was speaking on this morning on the Locked On Zags podcast. But the fact that our offense with our starting lineup can be so impactful, kind of grinds a team down a little bit. And then the second line comes in and then it's just like all out blitz on defense. Like that's hard to combat. So I'm really, really interested to see how Texas handles that sort of rotation.
Yeah. And I also think you'll see just speaking of rotation, our overall rotation is going to be tightened up a little bit, as you would expect against a better team. But really, I think obviously I feel pretty confident about Hickman and Salas's minutes. But I think this is where you'll start seeing Caden Perry and Ben Gregg. I mean, I know Perry got a decent amount of first half minutes last game against Dixie State. I think Gregg got in towards the end of the half, but I would think that would turn into one of them getting in late in the half, and that might be it, depending on where we're at foul trouble wise and score. But I think that's where we'll see it tighten up. I think you'll see some of these groups who have played more together in practice and some of those turnovers cleaned up a little bit. And hopefully, I mean, I'm not ringing any sort of alarm bell on Andrew Nembhard here, but he has not had the best start to the season so far in terms of 0 for 8 in the 2 exhibition games from 3. Well, he was 1 of 3. I think he was 1 of 3 yesterday. So got one to fall, but he didn't really seem to get a ton of opportunities. And we know he's a phenomenal pick and roll player. Mark Few says he's one of the best, if not the best pick and roll player, point guard that he's had on his team, on any team that he's ever had. But I don't remember seeing a ton of opportunities where he was able to get out in space off the pick and rolls and, do what he does best, where he's, making the defense kind of go all over the place with his ball fakes and either pulling up, getting to the hoop, kicking it out, hitting Timmy either ahead or behind on the roll. So hopefully we'll be able to spread it out a little bit. And with Timmy in there for more minutes this game, Nemhard will be able to get rolling too, because obviously that's a huge piece for us.
Yeah, I was just looking up last year's stats. In the first 7 games, Andrew Nemhard shot 18% from 3. Not great. But he finished the season 32%. So, I mean, not amazing either, but way, way better than 18%. So I think that it could just be a situation where it takes time for him to get back in the rhythm of practicing every day. And, maybe the travel last year had something to do with it. I think that as the season goes on, he'll be able to figure it out. It just is kind of a question of when will he become the shooting threat that we ended up seeing toward the end of last year, where he was knocking down step back threes to, put us up against UCLA in the Final Four. Like, when is he going to make those kinds of plays? I think that's a big question mark. And I hope that he really steps up. And I think a lot of the guys will actually just straight up step up on Saturday and make plays that, we may not have thought were possible for some of those guys to make. So, when the bright lights are on and you're not playing Sisters of the Poor or whatever, it's a different beast. So
yeah,
I think ultimately it'll be a solid game.
I think one thing with Nemhard too, that maybe we're seeing a little bit of a similarity with last year was, he was getting shots in different places than he was used to at the beginning of the year. So it seemed like I know in conference he shot, I think 37 or 38% from 3. And he seemed to be getting to the same spots where he was getting those shots a lot and was getting comfortable with those. And so maybe now it's a little bit of that again this year where, you have a different team. He's on ball a little bit more. And so where he's getting those shots, maybe just getting used to those and finding a rhythm for those shots that he's comfortable with. And so maybe that'll turn around as we progress. But yeah, I'm not really worried about that long term. 1 of 3 yesterday, shooting 33% on the season. So it's not, I mean, if you don't count the exhibition games, obviously that paints a little different picture, but I think he'll be fine. I just like to see him offensively be a little more aggressive in finding a shot or finding opportunities, because I think he's taken a little bit of a backseat so far. Not that I want him forcing anything, but he had his one opportunity where I saw his kind of hesitation and then burst to the basket that we saw last year. He actually missed the layup. It was one of those wide open ones, but seeing more of that where he's, playing with the defense, his change of pace and his explosiveness off the change of pace is something that makes him really special. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that in the prime time.
I'm just so excited for this season, and I'm just glad we got Zag basketball back. Well, that concludes episode 25. 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, ESPN2 on Saturday. The Zags take on the Texas Longhorns. It's, at this point, probably the most anticipated matchup of the season so far. I know we had a couple of big games played on Tuesday, but it's going to be a big one. I think that the whole nation's going to be watching, and I'm really hoping that we can show out. Really thankful for Cowan Jenkins for being able to edit these episodes. And we got some new articles up on zagaholic.net. So go check those out. And follow us on Twitter too, at BMaryZag.
And at Zag Talk. Also, one other note, I think we're with this game that I don't think we mentioned, this will be a chance to tie our Gonzaga's record for consecutive home wins. I think we're at, it's either at 52, this will be the 52nd, or it's at 54. I can't remember if we were starting at 52 or at 54, but another big thing. And yes, only top 5 matchup ever in Kennel history. So ready to keep the train rolling.
Let's do it. Go Zags.
Go Zags.